The gunshot echoed through the underground parking garage before Moa even realized she was running. Her heels slipped on oil-stained concrete as she cut between two black sedans, heart hammering so violently it drowned out the alarms shrieking somewhere above. A man shouted in Korean. Another voice screamed her name. Asha. She didn't turn back. 3 years. 3 years she had stood beside him, translated his words, softened his threats, hidden his silences. And the moment he got engaged to another woman, she quit. Now she was being hunted. A black SUV skidded sideways, blocking the ramp ahead. Doors flew open. Men poured out, dressed in dark suits, guns already raised. Asha froze. Her chest burned. Her lungs screamed. Her hands shook as she lifted them slowly, eyes darting for any exit, any miracle. "Don't," she said in Korean, her voice cracking. "Please, I didn't do anything." One of the men laughed softly. Another checked his phone. Then footsteps echoed behind her, slow, deliberate, unmistakable. The men straightened instantly. Asha felt it before she saw him, the pressure in the air, the way fear rearranged itself in her chest. If you love intense stories where power, obsession, and love collide, and one choice changes everything, make sure you subscribe, like, and comment right now, because this story only gets darker from here. Chotan. South Korea's most feared criminal kingpin stepped into the light like he owned it. 6 feet tall, lean, immaculate in a charcoal coat that probably cost more than her annual rent. His dark eyes locked onto her, unreadable, cold, familiar. For 3 years, she had stood at his right hand. Now she was nothing. "You're making this difficult," he said calmly, his voice low, controlled. "I told you not to leave." Asha swallowed hard. "You told me you were getting married." His jaw tightened, just slightly. "That doesn't change what you are to me." She laughed, a sharp, broken sound. "Your translator, your shadow, your secret." One of the men shifted uncomfortably. Another looked away. Taeyeon stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne. Wood, smoke, something dangerous. "You were never just my translator," he said. Her hands curled into fists. "Then why did you let me quit?" Silence stretched between them, heavy and loaded. "Because," Taeyeon said, "I wanted to see how far you run." Her blood turned cold. This wasn't where their story started. It started 3 years earlier, with a drink spilled in a nightclub and an insult that should have gotten her killed. The bass inside the Seoul nightclub thudded like a second heartbeat as Asha pushed her way toward the bar, already regretting saying yes to Yuna. She had been in the city exactly 6 days. She didn't know the rules yet, didn't know who mattered, didn't know who could end her life with a glance. She only knew she was tired, overwhelmed, and deeply homesick. "Just one drink," Yuna shouted over the music. "You need to loosen up." Asha smiled weakly, nodding as the bartender slid 2 glasses toward them. She reached for hers just as someone slammed into her from behind. The glass tipped. Liquid splashed. Straight onto a man's suit. The music seemed to fade, not actually, but enough that Asha felt the shift. The way bodies stilled. The way conversations died mid-sentence. She looked up slowly. The man in front of her didn't move, didn't curse, didn't react at all. He simply looked down at his soaked jacket. Then at her. His eyes were dark, sharp, calculating. He had the kind of face people didn't forget and never wanted to see angry. Asha's stomach dropped. "I'm so sorry," she said quickly, reaching for napkins. "I didn't mean." He didn't take them. Instead, he turned his head slightly. Every man around him stiffened. Yuna's face went white. She grabbed Asha's arm, whispering urgently, "Asha, don't." "What?" Asha whispered back, confused and irritated. "He bumped into me." The man finally spoke. "Do you know what this suit costs?" he asked calmly. Asha looked at him, really looked. The entitlement, the expectation, the absolute certainty that she would shrink. She didn't. "No," she said, "but I know what manners cost, and you're clearly bankrupt." The words landed like a slap. Someone gasped. Someone else laughed nervously. then stopped when no one joined in. The man stared at her for a long, dangerous moment. Asha's heart pounded, but something stubborn and reckless rose up inside her. She had left Tanzania to start over. She had lost enough already. She wasn't about to bow to some arrogant stranger in a nightclub. "If you're going to stand that close to people," she added, lifting her chin, "you should expect accidents." Yuna looked like she might faint. The man studied Asha's face, as if committing it to memory. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. Not a warm smile, not a kind one. An amused one. "Interesting," he said. He turned and walked away. The tension snapped all at once. Music surged back. People exhaled. Conversations restarted in frantic whispers. Yuna grabbed Asha's shoulders. "Are you insane?" she hissed. "Do you know who that was?" "No," Asha said, still shaking. "And I don't care." Yuna leaned in, eyes wide with fear. That was Cho Tan. The name meant nothing to Asha then. But it would come to mean everything. The next morning, the flowers arrived. White orchids, perfect, expensive, filling the entire reception area of the translation firm where Asha had just started her new job. There was no card. Only silence. And somewhere, watching from the shadows, a man who had just found the one person in the city who wasn't afraid of him. The flowers kept coming. Every morning, before Asha even set her bag down at her desk, the receptionist would clear her throat and gesture toward the lobby. And every morning there they were, white orchids arranged with obsessive precision, fresh as if cut minutes earlier, filling the air with a clean, almost suffocating scent. By the 5th day, the entire office was whispering. "Are they from a boyfriend? They're too expensive. Is she married?" Asha hated the way people looked at her now, curious, cautious, envious, afraid. She marched to the front desk, jaw tight. "Please tell whoever keeps sending these that I don't want them." The receptionist hesitated. We tried. The courier says he's just paid to deliver. He doesn't have a sender name." Asha closed her eyes briefly, breathing through the frustration. "Then donate them, or throw them away, I don't care." She turned on her heel and walked back to her desk, hands shaking. That night, her phone buzzed with a number she didn't recognize. "Unknown, did you like the flowers?" Her pulse spiked. She stared at the screen, thumb hovering. "Asha, stop sending them." The reply came instantly. "Unknown, no." She swallowed. "Asha, I don't accept gifts from strangers." "Unknown, we've met." Her breath caught. "Asha, once briefly, by accident." "Unknown, you insulted me." She huffed out a humorless laugh. "Asha, you deserved it." Several seconds passed. Then, "Unknown, coffee tomorrow noon, you choose the place." Asha locked her phone and tossed it onto the couch, packing her tiny apartment like a caged animal. Every instinct told her to say no, to block the number, to pretend none of this was happening. But curiosity, dangerous, traitorous curiosity, kept creeping in. At noon the next day, Asha sat rigidly at a corner table in a quiet cafe near her office, fingers wrapped around a mug she hadn't touched. She chose the place deliberately. Open windows, people everywhere, no shadows. The bell above the door chimed. Conversation dipped. She didn't have to look up to know it was him. Cho Tan moved through the cafe with the same quiet authority he had carried into the nightclub. He wore dark jeans and a fitted coat, casual for him, probably lethal for anyone else. Eyes scanned the room once, then found her. He stopped across from her table. "May I?" he asked. She gestured to the chair, forcing herself not to flinch. "You didn't apologize," she said. He sat. "Neither did you." "I spilled a drink." "You challenged me." "Good," she shot back. "Someone should." A corner of his mouth twitched. "That's why you're here." She frowned. "I'm here to tell you to stop sending flowers." "Then tell me in person." Silence settled between them, thick but not uncomfortable. He studied her openly, as if she were a puzzle he hadn't finished yet. "You're not afraid," he said finally. "I am," Asha replied honestly. I just don't let it decide things for me. That earned her a longer look. Most people decide within seconds whether they'll bow or beg. And I did neither, she said. So now you're what, curious? Yes. The simplicity of the answer unsettled her. You don't know anything about me, she said. I know you speak 6 languages, he replied smoothly. I know you left Tanzania after a broken engagement. I know you translate not just words, but intent. And I know you don't belong in this city yet. Her heart slammed against her ribs. You had me investigated. I do that with everything that interests me. She stood abruptly. This was a mistake. He didn't reach for her, didn't stop her. Sit down, he said quietly. I'm not asking for anything you don't want to give. She hesitated, sat back down slowly. Why the flowers? She demanded. They were an apology. For what? For wanting to see you angry again. Her throat tightened despite herself. I'm not entertainment. No, he agreed. You're disruption. They stared at each other, something charged humming beneath the surface. A week later, everything at work fell apart. Asha stood frozen in the glass-walled conference room as the client's voice crackled through the speakerphone, sharp and furious. Accusations flew, deadlines missed, confidential documents leaked. This reflects gross incompetence, the client snapped. We're terminating the contract. Her manager's face drained of color. Asha's stomach dropped. She knew she hadn't made those mistakes. She knew the translations were clean. Someone had sabotaged her. By the time the call ended, her hands were trembling. HR will be in touch, her manager said stiffly, unable to meet her eyes. Asha walked out of the room in a daze, humiliation burning her cheeks. She barely made it to her desk before her phone buzzed again. Unknown, don't panic. Her chest tightened. Asha, did you do this? Unknown, no, but I'm fixing it. Minutes later, the office doors opened. Chotan walked in like he owned the place. Gasps rippled through the room. Someone dropped a pen. Her manager stood up too quickly. Sir, this is a private office. Tayun didn't even glance at him. He walked straight to the conference room, phone in hand, and spoke calmly into it in flawless English. You sent the wrong files, he said. I have the originals, and the emails proving who altered them. He ended the call, turned, and handed the phone to Asha's stunned manager. Apologize to her, he said, publicly. The manager stammered, eyes darting between them. Asha, I'm sorry, we made an error. Whispers exploded. Tayun turned to Asha. Are you satisfied? She was shaking with anger. You had no right. I had every right, he said. You're under my protection. I didn't ask for it. You don't ask for gravity either, he replied evenly. It still affects you. She followed him out of the building, fury blazing. You embarrassed me. I saved your career. You marked me, she snapped. Now everyone's afraid of me. He stopped, turning to face her fully. Good. She stared up at him, breathless. I don't want to be owned. His gaze softened just a fraction. Then don't be. Then stay away from my life. He studied her for a long moment. I can't. Why? Because you see me, he said quietly, and you didn't look away. She opened her mouth to argue, and a sharp crack split the air. Glass shattered somewhere above them. Tayun moved instantly, grabbing her arm and pulling her into his chest as people screamed and scattered. Asha felt the vibration of his heartbeat against her cheek. Get down, he ordered, already scanning for the threat. Her pulse roared in her ears. This was no longer about flowers. This was war creeping closer. And she was standing in the middle of it. She looked up at him, eyes wide with realization. What did I walk into? She whispered. His jaw tightened. My world, he said. The first attack came 2 nights later. Asha was leaving a late shift, coat pulled tight against the cold as she stepped into the narrow alley beside her apartment building. She was halfway to the street when footsteps echoed behind her, too fast, too deliberate. She turned. 3 men blocked the exit. Her heart slammed. I don't have anything, she said quickly, backing up. Money in my bag, take it. One of them smiled. We're not here for money. The second grabbed her arm. She screamed. The sound barely had time to leave her throat before chaos erupted. A body slammed into the man holding her. Another flew backward, crashing into a stack of trash bins. The third barely had time to reach for his gun before a fist connected with his jaw. Asha stumbled, breath ragged, pressed against the brick wall. Taeyun stood between her and them like a wall of steel. His movements were fast, efficient, terrifying. No wasted motion, no hesitation, a sharp crack, a grunt of pain, silence. One man lay groaning on the ground. Another didn't move. Taeyun turned to her, eyes blazing. Are you hurt? She shook her head, numb. He pulled out his phone, already issuing orders in Korean, voice clipped and lethal. Within minutes, black cars rolled in. Men swarmed the alley, dragging the attackers away like trash. Asha watched it all, frozen. When it was over, Taeyun turned back to her. You're coming with me. No, she said immediately. I'm not. This isn't a discussion, he snapped, then softened. Please. That single word, please, undid her resistance. She followed him. The penthouse was nothing like she expected. No gaudy excess, no gold, clean lines, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city like a living map of power. Taeyun handed her a glass of water. She took it with shaking hands. Sit, he said gently. She sat. This happened because of me, she said flatly. Yes. You knew it would. Yes. And you still let me walk home alone. His jaw tightened. I underestimated how quickly my enemies would move. She laughed weakly. That's your version of an apology. I'm not sorry for wanting you, he said. I'm sorry for endangering you. Silence stretched. Why me? She asked quietly. You could have anyone. I don't want anyone, he replied. I want the woman who looked at me like I was just a man who spilled into her space. Her throat burned. I'm not built for this world. No, he said, but you change it. Days passed. Asha stayed in the penthouse under heavy security. She hated the confinement, hated the feeling of being watched, hated that part of her felt safe. Taeyun barely slept. She saw it in the shadows under his eyes, the way he paced at night, phone pressed to his ear, voice low and dangerous. One evening, she found him on the balcony, staring out at the city. You're exhausted, she said. He didn't turn. When I close my eyes, I see you bleeding. She swallowed. That's not healthy. Neither is caring, he said. Yet here we are. She hesitated, then stepped closer. You don't have to do this. Yes, he said quietly. I do. A week later, he took her to a company gala. She wore a simple black dress. No jewelry, no armor. Every eye followed them as they entered. Whispers rippled. Fear and curiosity tangled in the air. That was when Lee Jin-woo appeared. He was polished, handsome, safe, a politician's son with a careful smile. Asha, he said warmly, it's been too long. Taeyun stiffened beside her. Lee's gaze flicked to him. I didn't realize you were accompanied. I'm not, Asha said quickly. I'm just... With me, Taeyun finished. The air turned cold. Lee smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I heard you were available. Taeyun stepped closer to Asha, possessive without touching. You heard wrong. Later that night, Asha confronted him in the car. You don't get to speak for me. I do when men see you as leverage. I'm not your territory. No, he said fiercely. You're my weakness. The words hung between them, raw and unfiltered. That night, she found him in the dark, sitting on the edge of the bed. Tell me about your father, she said softly. He looked up, surprised. He was murdered, Taeyun said after a long pause, because he showed mercy. Her chest tightened, and you vowed never to. Yes. She reached out, hesitated, then rested her hand over his. Maybe mercy isn't weakness. He laughed bitterly. You're the only person who believes that. Then let me be the one. Their first kiss was slow, careful, not hungry but searching. When he pulled back, his forehead rested against hers. "I won't take anything you don't give," he said. She nodded. Eyes wet. "I know." The second kidnapping attempt came 2 days later. This time, they succeeded. Asha woke tied to a chair in a dim warehouse, heart pounding, head aching. Across from her stood a man with sharp eyes and a cruel smile. "We're going to teach your lover a lesson," he said. Hours later, Taeyun stood in the same space, blood on his hands, eyes empty of mercy. He didn't negotiate. He ended it. When he reached Asha, cutting her free with shaking fingers, she cupped his face. "Stop," she whispered. "Please." He collapsed against her, breath shuddering. That was the moment she understood. Loving him wasn't just dangerous. It was going to change everything. And once changed, there was no going back. Taeyun didn't let go of her even after they left the warehouse. He sat beside her in the back of the car, one arm wrapped around her shoulders, the other clenched tight enough that his knuckles were white. Blood streaked his cuff, not hers. Asha leaned into him, exhausted, shaken, alive. "You didn't have to kill them all," she said quietly. His jaw flexed. "Yes, I did. For me." "For the message," he replied. "No one touches what's mine." She stiffened at the word. He felt it immediately, his grip loosened. "I'm sorry," he said low. "That wasn't." "I know what you meant," she said, staring out the window as soul blurred past. "But I won't be owned." He exhaled slowly. "Then tell me what you want." The question surprised her. She turned to him. "I want honesty, I want choice, and I want to stop pretending I'm just collateral damage in your war." He met her gaze. "Then stay, not because I demand it, because you choose it." Silence stretched. She nodded once. "I'll stay, but on my terms." A muscle in his jaw relaxed. "Agreed." For a brief moment, the city felt quiet. It didn't last. The Yamamoto warning arrived the next morning, delivered in the form of a man kneeling on Taeyun's marble floor, bleeding from the mouth but still smiling. "You're distracted," the man said in accented Korean. "Our boss thinks it's time to collect." Taeyun didn't raise his voice. "Get out." The man laughed. "You used to kill messengers." "I've changed." "That will be your weakness." The man was dragged away, alive. That alone sent shockwaves through the underworld. Asha heard everything from the hallway. That night, she stood on the balcony with Taeyun, city lights flickering below. "Give them territory," she said quietly. He turned sharply. "No." "Listen to me," she insisted. "You win every war with blood, but this one costs you me." The words landed hard. "You're asking me to kneel," he said. "I'm asking you to live," she replied. "With me." He searched her face, conflict tearing through him. "If I give in, they'll keep pushing." "Or," she said softly, "they'll realize you're building something worth protecting." For the first time since she'd known him, Taeyun looked unsure. Days later, he proposed. They were alone in the penthouse kitchen. No guards, no suits, just late-night tea and the hum of the refrigerator. "Marry me," he said suddenly. She nearly dropped her cup. "What?" "I don't want to negotiate you anymore," he said. "I want you beside me, legally, publicly." Her heart raced. "You're doing this because you're afraid." "Yes," he admitted. "I'm afraid of losing you." She set the cup down carefully. "Then don't rush me." He closed his eyes. "How much time do you need?" "Until the Yamamoto threat is resolved," she said, peacefully. He nodded once. "Done." The kidnapping happened that same night. Ashan never heard the door open, never heard the guards fall. One moment she was asleep, the next, a cloth pressed over her face, the world dissolving into darkness. When she woke, her wrists were bound, her head pounding. The room smelled of incense and iron. Yamamoto Kenji sat across from her, impeccably dressed, hands folded. "You're smaller than I imagined," he said pleasantly. "Let me go," Asha said, her voice steady despite the fear curling in her stomach. He smiled. "You're very brave, that's the problem." Taeyun arrived at dawn. Not with an army. Alone. The warehouse doors slid open, guns raised. Yamamoto's men froze when Taiyan stepped forward, unarmed. "I'm here," Taiyan said calmly. "Release her." Yamamoto laughed. "You brought nothing." "I brought an end," Taiyan replied. What followed wasn't a massacre. It was a negotiation. Territory was ceded, roots were redrawn, blood was spared. When Asha was finally untied, Taiyan didn't rush to her. He waited, let her choose. She walked to him on unsteady legs and rested her forehead against his chest. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" he asked hoarsely. "For listening." The underworld trembled that day, not because Taiyan destroyed something, but because he gave something up. His mother came a week later. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't threaten. She studied Asha like an equation that didn't balance. "Love makes men careless," she said. "You will get him killed." Asha met her gaze. "Or I'll keep him alive long enough to become more than what you raised him to be." Taiyan's mother left without another word. The past didn't stay buried. David appeared outside the penthouse gates one rainy afternoon, soaked and furious. "You disappeared," he shouted when Asha stepped outside. "Do you have any idea what you did to me?" Taiyan arrived before she could answer. "You should leave," he said calmly. David sneered. "Is this the monster you work for now?" Taiyan moved faster than Asha could react. David hit the ground hard, blood on his lip. "Stop," Asha shouted. Taiyan froze instantly. She knelt beside David. "Go home," she said softly. "Please." David stared at Taiyan, fear finally sinking in, then staggered away. That night, Taiyan packed her things himself. "Move in," he said, "officially." She looked around the penthouse, the glass, the height, the danger. Then she nodded. The betrayal came from inside. Minyu had been loyal for 15 years. He smiled as he handed Taiyan his morning coffee. He bowed when Asha passed. And he sold them both. The attack was swift, brutal. Gunfire shattered glass, smoke filled the penthouse. Taiyan fought his way through it, roaring her name. When he found her, bound again, terror flashing across her face, something in him snapped and then steadied. He didn't kill Minyu in rage. He looked him in the eyes and said, "You chose." The underworld meeting that followed was unprecedented. Asha stood beside Taiyan, her hand in his, as men who once ruled through fear listened to a woman speak about restraint. About legacy. About children who shouldn't inherit violence. Silence followed. Then a challenge was issued. Single combat. Winner takes all. The wedding happened the night before. A small chapel, 2 witnesses, no music. When Taiyan slid the ring onto her finger, his hands trembled. "If I don't come back." She pressed a finger to his lips. "You will." The fight was brutal. Romano was larger, stronger. Taiyan was faster. When it ended, Romano lay defeated and alive. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Taiyan stepped back, bloodied victorious, and chose mercy. That choice reshaped everything. The government came next. Deals, files, protection. Then the clinic attack. Asha collapsed in Taiyan's arms, shaking, tears streaking her face. "I'm pregnant," she whispered. The world narrowed to a single point. Taiyan dropped to his knees. That night, he walked away from the underworld. 6 months later, the house outside Seoul smelled of earth and fresh paint. Taiyan planted vegetables badly. Asha laughed often. Their son was born on a quiet morning. Years passed. On their 10th anniversary, they returned to the nightclub. Taiyan knelt, offering a new ring. "Marry me again," he said. This time, they did it in Tanzania. Under open sky. Free. And when people asked how it all began, Asha smiled and said, "I spilled a drink." And a man who ruled by fear chose love instead. Taiyan did not sleep the night after the warehouse. Neither did Asha. She lay on the edge of the bed in the penthouse guest room, staring at the ceiling as the city glowed faintly through the glass walls. Every sound felt amplified. Every shadow felt alive. When she closed her eyes, She saw the man's smile before Taeyun broke him. When she opened them, she wondered how close she had come to dying for a war that wasn't hers. A soft knock came at the door. "Asha." She sat up. "Come in." Taeyun stepped inside quietly, dressed in a black t-shirt instead of a suit, his hair damp as if he'd just showered. He looked human, exhausted, younger somehow. "I wanted to check on you," he said. "I'm not fragile," she replied, then immediately regretted how defensive it sounded. "I know," he said. "That's why I'm worried." She gestured to the chair. He didn't sit. He stood near the window, hands in his pockets, eyes fixed on the city. "You should leave Seoul," he said suddenly. Her chest tightened. "What?" "For a while," he clarified. "I'll arrange everything somewhere safe." "So this is you deciding again," she said sharply. He turned to face her. "This is me choosing your life over my pride." She stared at him. "And what if I choose to stay?" Silence stretched. "You don't understand what's coming," he said finally. "You were a warning shot." "Then teach me," she shot back. "Don't lock me out." He studied her, jaw tight, then nodded once. "Fine, but if you stay, you listen." The first name he taught her was Yamamoto. The Japanese clan didn't rush. They waited. Businesses Taeyun controlled began bleeding money. Shipments vanished. Allies went silent. It was warfare without bullets, and it terrified her more than the violence. Asha began translating for him officially. At first, it was small meetings, private rooms, men who looked at her like she was an accessory until she opened her mouth and dismantled them with precision. "You don't soften his threats," one man sneered during a meeting. "You hide them." Asha met his gaze calmly. "I make sure you understand them before it's too late." Taeyun watched her closely after that. One night, after a meeting ran long, they sat together on the balcony, the city breathing below them. "You're good at this," he said. "I hate it," she replied. He nodded. "Both can be true." She hesitated. "Why did you really hire me?" He didn't answer right away. "Because you don't lie when you translate," he said. "You don't protect egos, you protect meaning." "And now?" she asked. "Now," he said quietly, "you protect me from myself." The gala invitation arrived 2 days later. Lee Jin-woo's name was embossed on thick cream paper. "Don't go," Taeyun said immediately. "That's not your decision," Asha replied. "It's a trap." "So is half your life," she said. "I'm not hiding." The ballroom glittered with wealth and ambition. Politicians, executives, smiles sharp enough to cut. Asha felt eyes on her the moment she entered with Taeyun. Whispers followed, fear mixed with curiosity. Lee approached with practiced charm. "Asha, you look different." She smiled politely. "So do you." His gaze slid to Taeyun. "I didn't know you were exclusive." Taeyun stepped closer. "Now you do." Later in the car, Asha exploded. "You humiliated him on purpose." "Yes." "You're territorial," she snapped. "I'm honest," he countered. "He wants what he can't have." She folded her arms. "You don't own me." "I know," he said quietly. "That's why it scares me." The attack came that night. Gunfire shattered the glass wall of the penthouse as alarms screamed. Asha dropped instinctively, heart racing, ears ringing. Taeyun was already moving. "Stay down," he ordered, shoving a gun into her trembling hands. "Don't use it unless you have to." Men flooded the room, smoke, shouting. The smell of cordite burned her throat. One man lunged toward her. She fired. The sound was deafening. The man fell. Asha stared at her shaking hands as Taeyun dragged her behind cover. When it was over, the penthouse was in ruins. She slid down the wall, sobbing. Taeyun knelt in front of her, gripping her face gently. "You did nothing wrong." "I shot someone," she whispered. "You survived," he said fiercely. "That's all that matters." She looked up at him through tears. "I can't keep doing this." He pressed his forehead to hers. "I know." That was when he told her about his father. About mercy, about betrayal, about the night everything hardened inside him. "I swore I'd never be weak," he said. Then you walked into my life and ruined everything. She laughed shakily. I'm sorry. No, he said, don't be. Their first night together wasn't desperate or violent. It was slow. Careful. Taeyeon let her lead. When she froze, he stopped. You're safe, he whispered. I won't take anything you don't give. She believed him. For a moment, the world felt quiet. It didn't last. The message came at dawn. A photo. Asha asleep. Taken hours earlier. Attached was a single line. You chose wrong. Her blood turned to ice. Taeyeon crushed the phone in his hand. They were here, she whispered. Yes, he said, already issuing orders. And now they're dead. She grabbed his arm. Stop. He looked at her, surprised. If you keep escalating, they'll never stop, she said. Give them something else. He searched her face. Like what? Territory, she said. Not you, not me, land. He stared at her like she'd suggested cutting out his heart. They'll see it as weakness. Or they'll see it as the end, she replied. You don't want this life forever, I know you don't. Silence. Finally, he nodded once. I'll consider it. And as the night deepened, Asha realized something with startling clarity. This wasn't an escape. This was the ending they had earned. If you've stayed with this story to the end, take 1 second right now to like, subscribe, and comment, because stories like this survive on people who value depth, emotion, and transformation. Thanks for watching, besties.